Live. All right, let's do this. Hi everyone, welcome to my panel, Worlds Collide, the history of comic books and politics. So, little backstory. I got my BA and MA in poli-sci from UT and Texas State. This was actually my thesis from Texas State. And the whole premise of it actually came from a professor of mine at UT who it was politics of media, and so it's how the media is influenced by politics. And I was in her office doing some pretty much like Q&A, like, hey, I'm having really trouble with this paper, blah, blah, blah. She then talking about, like, I'm going to comic books. She said, oh, what do you collect with comic books? And she goes, well, did you ever realize that comic books are heavily influenced by politics? And it was like, I mean, Captain America and Wonder Woman, yeah, that's kind of blatantly obvious. But other than that, not so much. A little after 9/11, but. And she goes, we'll go back and look at it. Spider-Man's original villains, who are they? And I'm like, well, and the geek in me goes, well, Green Goblin, Kingpin, Doc Ock. She goes, well, who are they? I'm like, rich businessman, crooked politician. Okay, I get it. So that's how it. She goes, well, if you go to grad school, this would be an amazing thesis, and you should write it. All right. So I go to grad school and tell them, like, hey, this is my thesis, and everyone's like, that is kind of bizarre. Write it. I'm like, okay, great. So that was it, and I did my thesis and graduated. So the reason why, and I think everyone here in this panel or in this room, but also at this con, the reason why we love comic books so much is because we see ourselves in them. Whether, and then for the longest time, it's always been kind of dismissed as a child's play thing, as like over-sexualized men and women in skin-tight bodysuits. And I think lately we've started to realize that it's not so much a child's play thing, but it's us. It's our mythology. It's our Roman Greek mythology. So the reason why I think I got this panel, I've been trying to get this panel for years. I'm like, come on, let me in here. And they're like, no, we're good. And I think the reason is, and we'll get into this later on, Comicscape. Anyone are familiar with that? Where people kind of have been upset about the fact that we're seeing more representation in comic books, and it's a really ridiculous idea. So, comic books are like, why does representation matter? And it's because we want to see ourselves as the hero. For like the longest time, since the beginning, and we'll get into it, heroes have pretty much been straight white males or straight white females, and now we're seeing, Black, Latino, lesbian, LGBTQ, and it's a beautiful rainbow of collections. So let's go back all the way back to the Great Depression. I got a few notes here, so and if you have any questions, by all means raise your hand, and I will definitely answer. I would like this to be a Q&A at times, so let's do it. So let's go back to the beginning. Great Depression. Great Depression, for the most part, so Black Tuesday, stock markets crashed, and you see people finding out who they really are, and a lot of people did kind of start to be a little greedy. So before the Great Depression, most comics were blue-collar workers, and the comedy was just slapstick, very basic, Three Stooges type, and that changed with the Great Depression because there's nothing really funny anymore about blue-collar workers. It's like, oh, they got a job. So what happened? So first big superhero is who? Superman. Thanks, man. Superman. So we get Superman first off, and then Batman about a half a year later. The question here that was presented is, Why? Why Superman? Well, to understand also the 1920s, political system, kind of similar to today, very anti-immigrant, very anti-worker, and we see people kind of trying to figure out who do we look to. And so Jerry Siegel and Schuster created the ultimate illegal alien. Not even just another country, but from another planet. And Superman. And not only is Superman an alien, because they were both immigrants too themselves, he was bigger and larger than life. He was that person that could do more than just, the beat cop. He could literally, and he did, pick up slumlords by their collars, take them up to the sky, and drop them. Batman and Superman were not nice at the beginning. They were very much like, if he dies, he dies. And they completely the duffel engine of Rocky IV. So, Superman is this larger than life. He took on slumlords, crime lords, mob bosses, wife beaters. And we get Batman. And then Batman is also a complete out of right field character. So Bob Kane, Bill Finger, create this millionaire playboy who isn't the norm. Granted, dressing up like a bat isn't normal to begin with, but what does Bruce Wayne do with his money? You have millionaires at this time who are completely just throwing their money away and whatever they want, and Bruce Wayne is trying to rebuild Gotham. He's trying to do better than. So we get those two strange characters. All right, now Superman, Batman, they exist for about a decade. With something like Captain Marvel, and then we completely avoid World War II. We try and stay out as long as possible. Why? World War I happened. We were trying to be very isolationist. And so World War II happens, and we get the Lend-Lease program. We're trying everything that we can to stay out of World War II. So we look at Captain America now and Wonder Woman. So these two characters were actually created before we got involved in the war. Why? And that's the thing I will always present is why. Why did this happen? Well, a professor of mine at Texas State, and y'all ever have that moment where it's like such blindingly obvious that you are shocked you missed it in the first place? So he goes, who created Captain America? I'm like, oh, Joe Simon and Jack Kirby, because I'm a huge geek and I know this. He goes, Simon and Kirby. He goes, what religion were they? I'm like, they were Jewish. He goes, so you have two Jews in New York, downtown New York, seeing what's happening in Europe to their people. What did they create? They create, and in the Jewish faith, it's the golem, it's the protector of the Jewish people. And you don't get much bigger of a protector than Captain America. And the first page we see is what? Him punching Hitler, which, by the way, goes back to, if you see a Nazi, punch them. It's just true. It's just what happens. Okay, so, Captain America. And the great thing about Captain America is what? What does he look like? I'll let y'all before my kids what he looks like. What's he look like? He's blonde hair, blue eyes. He's the Ubermensch. He's what Hitler would have loved. He's like, oh my God, this is my child. I don't look like that at all, but that's what I want. And so they took what Hitler wanted and made him the ultimate face of America, fighting back, protecting the people. Wonder Woman, the same thing. Comes from, the island of Themyscira, fighting the war to try and help people. Now, William Mouton, we'll get into him in the 50s because he did get into a little trouble. But he was also the creator of the lie detector test, which is why Wonder Woman has the golden lasso. All right, now, the great thing about these comics is the inherent hypocrisy of these comics. So you have Captain America, you have Superman, you have Batman, you have Captain Marvel, you have Wonder Woman marching into the war, and they're doing this great, like, oh, we're going to protect the people. The problem that you have is the way the artists depict the axis of evil. The Germans, while they were portrayed as dim-witted, Colonel Klink, style characters, they were still drawn as normal people. Same with the Italians. The Japanese, on the other hand, I guess because they bombed us, Hitler never got over here, were drawn as what? Really young, really slanty-eyed, all had the Fu Manchu, all had like the really long nails, and like, these are evil. It's like, yeah, they're evil. I mean, they're bad. I wouldn't put them on like Nazi level evil, but they're still bad. So you saw that hypocrisy. Also, Wonder Woman was incredibly racist. Like, wow, how? And then you're like, oh, it's 1930s, 1940s. Okay, that makes sense. Sadly. But the comic books were very much big in the war effort. Yes.
What are some examples of Wonder Woman being racist?
Oh, so, not so much her, the character, but like her sidekick was very much the Uncle Tom, like Jim Crow era, blackface, big lips, yes a massa, no massa, like that type. And like you're reading this, and you're like, oh, okay, Wonder Woman, she's tied up in a really because Mutan was very much into BDSM, like really kinky, really like wow type of stuff. And so she had a sidekick who was, or her layer had like two house servants, one black, one male, one female, both black, and they were both like yes massa, no massa. And I was like, wow, like still 1940s, that's still really racist. Okay, but that's how the Japanese, like the way they portrayed Black Americans, and you're just kind of like taken aback just a bit. Now, granted, this is like the early set, not now, like not the characters we know and love. But they were still, like selling war bonds, buy war bonds, protect the boys. There was some like very latent homosexuality in the artwork, which I don't know if they meant to or not, but one of the most famous panels or covers is, Superman, Batman, and Robin like sitting on top of like these like giant, cannons in between their legs, and you're like, fair enough, sure, why not? We got firepower here. There you go. So we get slapped, and I hate saying it, but they would have like buy a war bond, slap a Jap. It's like that's what you get in the 1940s. And once again, it's very much a lot of the anger is directed at the Japanese and not so much the Germans, which they still had animosity towards it, but it was still DC was very much like slap a Jap, and Marvel was like, we're gonna fight Hitler. So we get to the end of World War II. Spoilers, we won. But then something really interesting happens. So what happened at the end of World War II? Anyone in here gonna know what we went into?
The Cold War?
The Cold War, yes. And you know who created that? You know who coined the Cold War?
Oh,
It's Churchill. Yeah, it's Churchill, because he was like, we're going into something really dangerous here with Russia. So, going into World War II, like you have people, you have like, the characters themselves going into battle, which there wasn't much thought into it, But now we get into the Korean War, and once again, comics kind of take this dark turn, because you have writers and artists coming back home from World War II, and it's the same thing we see in the 60s and 70s and later on in today, is that they've now seen war up close, so now it's like almost like a therapy. So in the 50s, and we're fighting like the evil communists, Cold War was very much, like, we're going to attack, no, we're going to attack, and it's like, no one really attacks each other. We attacked each other on other countries, never on our own. So, in the 50s, we get the Korean War. And Superman and Batman kind of get out of battle. There's no more like, hey, we're fighting the Korean War. It's like, oh, we're fighting missile flights from the fifth dimension. They're very much out of reality. Captain America, Namor, the people that fought in World War II, there's not really a place for them now. Because with World War II, there was an enemy. It was Germany, it was Italy, it was Japan. Communism is like, what are you fighting? It's an idea. You can't fight an idea. Once it's out there, it's out there. You can't punch it. I mean, you can, theoretically speaking, I guess, punch someone. So Captain America goes away. Namor goes away. We get G.I. Joe, not Frank, is it Hasbro? Hasbro, thank you. But it's a G.I. Joe for like actual vets writing it. And like one of the most like disturbing covers is a G.I. Joe, is a G.I. Army, armed forces guy with a puppy in one hand and a Tommy gun in the other hand shooting at Korean soldiers while they're running away. And it's very, like he's like happy, like, I got a puppy, I'm American. It's like, God, okay. But because of that, because we don't know what to do with them anymore, the superhero genre dies for all intents and purposes. Like Superman and Batman still going, but they're fighting like outlandish characters. Marvel, their comics were World War II, Captain America, the Defenders, Human Torch, Namor. And so they kind of like find out like, oh, well, what's big? Westerns are big, sci-fi is big, romance novels are big. Kind of kid comics, we get Richie Rich, Huey Lewis. Is it Huey Lewis? Baby Huey, there we go. And so, yeah, I know, we get these like really childish comic books. And so, we kind of feel like, okay, well, all right, well, maybe this is it. And then, what saves it? Kind of. Well, almost. Spoilers. The House of Un-American Committee. So we can't fight communism, really. I mean, we can go to war like with other people and fight communism, but we'll be damned if we have communists here in America. And so we get The Seduction of the Innocent, which was Frederick Wortham's book showing how comic books have been secretly poisoning our youth. And has anyone ever actually read Seduction of the Innocent? If you haven't, don't, because you're not missing anything. It's a very, I mean, the psychology in it is very, like, so, right before The Seduction of the Innocent came out, we had horror books, EC Comics, Tales from the Crypt, crime, like, it was like very graphic, and he's like, oh, well, the undead are bad for us. Batman and Wonder Woman are gay, which Wonder Woman, okay, can make that argument. No, yeah, she's totally like LGBT, bi, perfect. Which is also why in the 1960s Batman show, they introduced Aunt Harriet. Because nothing screams two straight guys and sleeping or living with your aunt. I don't know. So, I don't know how they figured like Aunt Harriet were like, hey, these are two straight characters. So, sorry, it's just funny. So we also said, Betty and Veronica were hurting the youth, saying that they were over-sexualized, which this is Archie. Not Riverdale Betty and Veronica. 1950s Betty and Veronica was like wholesome, innocent, and they're like, oh no, they're sluts. I'm like, what are you reading? Like, there's reading, and then there's like wishful thinking, all right? There was like, okay, you were taking this way too far. Marriage, religion, you had to treat these institutions properly. You couldn't make fun of them. Crime could not be in any which way or form shown as a positive. And then also saying that he also said that Superman was stealing time. I don't know. He's like stealing time from the youth because they're reading books, and God forbid they're reading comic books. So we see Wortham like really like dig into it. And so because of that, because of the House of Un-American Committees and the seduction of innocent, we see comic books take a proactive stance. So in the 40s, you had movies create their own guidelines. Okay, well, and when it was pretty much the basis for the MPAA, PG, PG-13, R. Comics said, you know what? Before you, because comics was going to come down to comics. Say, hey, we're going to outlaw it. France actually for about 10 years outlawed comic books in France. So comic books came together and said, hey, we are going to self-monitor ourselves, and the comics code was created. And you had to pass all these guidelines to get the stamp of approval, and the only way to get published was to have the stamp of approval on your cover. If you didn't, you had to go back to the drawing board, or it got scrapped completely. So still, really goofy comic books, but what happened? Frank, you said it earlier, the space race. So America and Russia start trying to get to space first. Russia beat us into space with both Sputnik and the first man into space. Stupid commies. So, kidding, kind of. So, what happens? Well, DC goes, you know what? Let's revisit our past and try and make them better. Which, by the way, this happens, now every other year, but back then it was huge. So we got the second Flash. No longer Jay Garrick, it is Barry Allen, forensic cop, who was a cop, good guy, and the Green Lantern, number 2, Hal Jordan, who's now an intergalactic cop. And so Marvel goes, hey, we can beat that. And who do we get? We get the first family. Now what's funny about the Fantastic Four is that it's both space race and a little bit of Vietnam. But the only person out of those 4 who said we should not go into space, and this is in the first issue, was Ben Grimm, the Air Force pilot. He goes, hey, we shouldn't go, we're not ready, it's unplanned, we don't have the manpower. And Reed's like, I've got all the calculations, we're good to go. Sue Storm's like, whatever he says, he's the man, I'm good. For about 70 years, for like 1930s, like pretty much to the 90s. Female characters, a lot of guys just didn't know how to write them. So even though the Invisible Girl is a big character, she's still like in love with Reed and the damsel in distress and always, needs help. Sue Storm, teenager, complete hothead. Like whatever my sister does, I'm going, cool. The Air Force pilot is the one person going, okay, you know what, this is actually a really bad idea. And the one person that said this is a really bad idea, what happens to him? He gets the worst mutation. He becomes the thing. You're like, oh, sorry, Ben. So we get that. Now, the Silver Age. So the Golden Age was everything. There is a little discrepancy of when the Golden Age actually ends. It's the birth of Superman to, most people say like 1955. So you have like a few year period in there. Silver Age starts with the Flash and Green Lantern and the Fantastic Four. Alright, so now we at the start of the Silver Age. We're at the start of it. I've always said that the 60s and 70s gave us some of the greatest movies, music, and comic books. Because it's kind of true. Wow, Game of Thrones is really rowdy back there. You know you're ending in 2 days, right? Sorry, no, don't get me wrong. I love 2 weeks, 2 episodes. Same thing. All right, so we get the space race, and we get the Flash and Green Lantern. Now, the cool thing about DC is that they gave us the first really independent woman in comic books with Lois Lane. The problem with Lois Lane is that they've never been able to really, up until a few decades, know how to handle her. She's an independent woman, which is great. She doesn't take any crap from anyone, which is great. But the minute she gets around Superman, she just kind of like flutters like, oh. If you're going to be a strong woman, write a strong woman. So anyways, we'll get into Lois Lane later. Alright, so what else happens in the 60s? Well, we get the Civil Rights Movement. And which characters really embodied the Civil Rights Movement? The X-Men. So, for those of you who are live, you can't hear it. They're like going nuts back there. I'm guessing they're winning stuff, which is cool. We get the Civil Rights Movement, which, started in like the mid-50s, Brown v. Board of Education, the NAACP, which had been going on for decades, since like the 20s, but really ramped up in the 50s. Actually, let's rewind just a bit to like the 1920s and 30s with the NAACP. The NAACP did a brilliant strategy for taking down the systemic racism. They didn't go for the home runs. They went for the very small court cases. Because they knew, like, okay, we are facing a completely uphill battle. So what we're going to do is we're just going to chip away at little cases, case by case, case by case, case by case. Mid-50s, we get Brown Board of Education. And we've had all these little chips happening until finally it's, all right, bases loaded, bottom of the ninth, 2 out, Bregman's up, no. We get up with Brown Board of Education, boom. Now we have a home run. Now we have all these really big cases coming up. And in the 60s, you have Martin Luther King, Professor Xavier, Malcolm X, Magneto. And the great thing about Magneto is that he was never, he's a bad guy, but he's not a bad guy. I'm going to quote Wreck-It Ralph here. You understand why he's kind of an a-hole. He survived the Holocaust. He saw what happens to people when you kind of like don't listen. So, we get the X-Men. And the X-Men have been this great example, this great projection for a multitude of groups. You have civil rights in the 60s. Females have used them. LGBT have used them. I mean, really, if you, and I hate to say it, Bryan Singer in X-Men 1 used his coming out as a catalyst for the X-Men, because he's like, it's tough being someone who is hated and feared in this world, and nobody embodies that better than the X-Men. Alright, so, we've got the X-Men. We've got them really kind of going out there. Once again, 4 guys, 1 chick. Oh, and she's still kind of weak. Even though, and this is where I think they kind of like made up for it, the weakest of the original 5 has become the strongest out of like almost anyone in the Marvel universe. Let's just be real here. Alright, so we've got that. Now, what else is happening in the 60s? So, at the Cold War, while we never actually went to war with Russia, we had 3 battles with Russia over communism. Vietnam, or the Korean War, Vietnam, and then the 80s in Afghanistan. So now we got Vietnam. Alright, so out of Vietnam, what did we get? And it's all these like little things, like something happens, and it influences comic books. Well, who comes back? Captain America. Who gets created? Iron Man. Tony Stark is a war profiteer. And I'm glad they changed this in 2008. But Iron Man was a war profiteer, making money off of Vietnam, until he gets kidnapped and one of the things blows up. Shrapnel. I am Iron Man. The cool thing, though, out of this is that in World War II, the heroes went to war. Like, boom, there we go. Got this. We're fine. We got Superman behind us. So, like, yeah, if you had Superman, the war would not have lasted as long as it did. But you have writers and artists who fought in these wars, and they're like, it's not that simple. It's not that easy. How do we... So, we get the return of Captain America, Steve Rogers. But now it's, okay, well, we're not going to send them to Vietnam. We're not going to have buy war bonds to cover our books. We have to do something different. And so we create, we get like S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra and like metaphors for Vietnam. We get much more, symbolism in the books, which is great. So that's Marvel. And also the great thing about Marvel and Stanley and Kirby, Ditko, all the amazing names is that they based it in New York. Why? Because they knew, so I got to interview Dennis O'Neil one time, and he was really cool. And I was like, well, why? He goes, well, you can do whatever you want. Star City, Central City. You can create the cities, you can create the location, and just do whatever you want. Stanley was like, no, we want to do it in real time, Johnny Storm's driving a Corvette because he's got the money. It's, you walk around New York and you can imagine seeing Spidey swinging along. You can see, you could go to where the Daily Bugle is. You can go to where, Daredevil would be, work when Stacy dies, all that good stuff. And it brings a bit more familiarity with these comics. You're like, oh, I know. There actually is a book, and actually my sister was gracious enough to walk me around New York. I'm like, oh, this is where this happened. This is where this happened. And she's like, my brother's a geek. Cool. But also we get, we get the creation of the Black Panther. We get these really great characters out of the 60s, out of the Civil Rights Movement, and in Vietnam, we get the Hulk. Now, here's the great thing about the Hulk, and where, once again, politics steps in. Who was Hulk's original enemy? It's the Army. The Army is his original enemy. And it's not that the Army's bad, it's that General Ross wanted to control the Hulk. And granted, in Ross's defense, when you have a raging, 1-ton monster running around that can demolish things, you might want to, control that. So we get these really great characters created. So, what happens with DC? Well, DC is doing not much. Not yet. 60s is kind of this, the early 60s, we're like, well, we're not in Vietnam, we're not doing that. We have The Flash, we have Green Lantern, we have Superman, we have Batman. Batman is kind of, this, kiddie show now. But in the late 60s, early 70s, something, I hate to say good happens, the ABC show gets canceled. Which, granted, if you actually look at the number of episodes in those 3 seasons, it's about 10 years worth. It's like 66 episodes worth of shows. You're like, that's like a full decade worth. So why was that a good thing? Well, DC didn't know what to do with Batman anymore. The camp has kind of destroyed the comic book. So what happens? And this is not political, but kind of a pop culture thing. Well, DC brings in these 2 relatively young creators, Neil Adams and Dennis O'Neil, and here, Batman's yours. Do with it what you wish. And we get this great, gritty, dark Knight. So we go into the 70s, and the Silver Age is only a decade, whereas the Golden Age was this 20-year period dealing with World War II and rising of communism. The Silver Age is only a very short period. Granted, the Bronze Age is much shorter, but the Silver Age is only 10 years. And in that 10 years, we get, this birth of characters. And I can't believe no one stopped me and that I missed a huge character that was created in the 60s.
Spider-Man.
Thank you, Spidey. I forgot Spider-Man. Now, Spider-Man, this is where it's really cool. The publisher, Stanley's publisher, hated the idea of Spider-Man. No one wants to see a teenage hero. Teenagers are stupid. Granted, when you look back at your teenage self, you're like, wow, I was really dumb. For anyone who's looking, everyone in the head, the audience, yeah, I was a dumb teenager. But what is great about Spider-Man is that everyone can relate to Spider-Man in some way, shape, or form. The partner luck, missing out on getting the girl or the guy. Just, running late for school, not having enough cash for whatever. And in the 60s, during the revolution, during this, whole counterculture society, Spider-Man was one of the top 5 icons next to Che. Because it was such an outlandish far out idea to have a teenager be a hero. Not just a hero, but like down on his luck, like, oh, I gotta get homework, and fight Doc Ock, and ask Mary Jane out, and oh, Gwen Stacy might like me? Okay, and the bully's gonna beat me up. Okay, cool. This is my high school. Awesome. And everyone can relate to that. Alright, so we go from the 60s into the 70s, and we get the Bronze Age, and the Bronze Age is maybe 8 years. In the 70s, it's a very groovy timepiece, if you will. But who gets created in the 70s? So once again, we get people coming back from war, from Vietnam. We're kind of coming out of this. And we get the birth of the Punisher, who actually, my buddy Jason and I got to interview Jerry Conway today, and he was like, he wasn't supposed to be a hero. He's an anti-hero at best, villain, pretty much. We get the death of Gwen Stacy, which Stanley has said it was to really solidify the comic books. Like, these are your characters, and they won't always live. Which, luckily, she's like one of the few characters that actually stayed dead. Granted, we've had clones in alternate universes, but the actual, like, 616 Marvel Universe Gwen Stacy has stayed dead. But also, we get Marvel bucking the comics code for a few issues. Congress asked Stanley to do an issue, or some issues dealing with LSD and the dangers of drugs. So, they have Harry Osborn taking LSD, thinking he can fly, and so Spider-Man has to save him. And then the repercussions are like, hey, you're in the hospital because you tripped so badly, you thought you could fly, and Spider-Man had to save you. The head of the comics code at the time was Carmine Infantino, who created Flash 2, and he said, no, we will not give you the code. And he's like, well, yeah, but Congress wants us to make this. The government is saying, we're good, we're okay with this. And I'm like, no. So those are the only 3 issues of Spider-Man up until, like, I think 2000 without the comics code. It was never authorized. On top of that, we get Blade, we get the return of the horror genre that had been kind of like pushed away for a while. And we get really cool, Werewolf by Night, which is the only time you can be a werewolf. Blade the Vampire Hunter, and you get these really great characters. You get Luke Cage, the blaxploitation of pop culture, of course, came into comic books, because why wouldn't it? Oh, real quick trivia, if anyone doesn't know this, the original Black Panther was going to be what color?
White.
It's going to be white. Yeah, it's going to be white. Because what screams, Black Panther and King of Wakanda better than a white guy? And Jack Kirby says, no. He's got to be a black. He's from Africa. He's a black king. He's got to be black. Which is really, really, when you think about it, wow. The 60s. So, what happened at the end of the 70s? Comics kind of just, poof. Nothing really happens. The Bronze Age is kind of short. We get, we get the return of Batman as the Dark Knight. The X-Men get canceled for, 5 years. Superman always kind of maintained his Superman-ish until about 5 years ago. Then the 80s, we get Reagan, we get Reaganomics, and we get AIDS. And all this kind of culminate in The Dark Knight Returns, the X-Men returning. And I'm not even like talking about like the zines or like the Heavy Metal 3000 of like 78, 79, 80. Like those are completely on another level. But comic books in the 80s start to take a darker turn. Daredevil completely takes a dark turn. Frank Miller takes him from blind lawyer to blind lawyer who was heavy with Catholic guilt, and anyone who's ever been a Catholic or gone to Catholic school knows that Catholic guilt is a very real thing. His one-time flame is now a heroin-addicted porn star. It's like, all right, cool, I can see that. Couldn't, but he did that. Batman goes dark. You have all these characters going dark, and they get dark in the 90s. It's a reflection of the way that America was. We have all this like outlandish success, like Wall Street, but then you look down in the actual street level, and it's very dark. And you write what you know. And if you're writing, if you're walking to work, or you're walking to work, and you are kind of afraid of getting jumped by a heroin addict in New York, you write what you know. And that was what they do. So, more and more of these comics starting to kind of break away from the code, kind of starting to, create their own way. And then we get Elseworlds. And we get all this up until the 90s. Now, the 90s is, like, once again, like, modern age is, I think, still kind of going on. I think we're kind of in the heroic age in Marvel, but the 90s, what happens? Well, we get a good economy. We get Clinton. We get things that's like, all right, well, we're not in war when we're in skirmishes. We've always been in skirmishes. But we're not, fighting a giant war. So what happens to our heroes? If you'll ever read comic books in the 90s, it is the weirdest period of comic books that your character will ever experience. Captain America starts dying from his super soldier serum and is in now a metal suit that Tony Stark made for him, but also Red Skull is in a metal suit because that's the only way they can survive, and like, what is happening? Batman gets his back broken, which actually that was kind of a good storyline. What else happens? Spider-Man gets cloned over and over and over again, which is less of the better. But comic books also start taking chances. So we get like the first announced gay character. The first Marvel character to come out was North Star. And John Byrne was like, why are there no gay characters? If we're going to represent everyone, well, everyone has to be included. And what better, than one of, out of the X books. Like, yeah, it makes sense. In DC, it was actually Pied Piper, who, if you ever read The Flash, he was a bad guy, but, the Flash rogues aren't really, like, bad guys. They're like, meh. Like, you're gonna rob, and then I'll get a beer with you, and then rob again. I'll put you in jail. You get out. So the Pied Piper, they have him come out as gay, and it's like, oh, now we have not great representation, but we have better representation. Now everyone's getting included. Now I mentioned the AIDS virus earlier. The AIDS virus in the 80s was a death sentence. If you had HIV, you were going to die. The scary thing, though, and I remember being a kid, not knowing how to get AIDS. Like, no one knew how you got it, other than, like, sex and don't share needles, which I'm like, as an 8-year-old, I'm like, all right, fair enough. I'm not doing any of those. Okay, great. DC put out PSAs in the comic books about how to, you can hug. Just if you know someone who has AIDS, give them a hug, because they probably need the hug. They're dying. They don't need you to be scared of them. And it's this really tragic thing. So, once again, who takes it upon themselves to represent a minority group that isn't being looked or cared for? The X-Men. And in the 90s, the X-Men created this really horrible virus called the Legacy virus. That if you got it, you were dead. There was no cure. Once you got it, you were dead. And it's like, oh, and people also, used, kind of reflected on like cancer, which back in the 90s, if you got a certain type of cancer, you not like today, like, all right, well, stage 1, okay, we're good. Stage 2, okay, we're good. Back then, it's like, dicey. But AIDS was a death sentence. So if you got the Legacy virus, if you're a mutant in Marvel Universe, you got that virus, you were dead. And also we got like an overflooding of the market. People kind of saw, comic books as a way to make money later on. X-Men #1, one of the biggest sellers, is now like $1 each. Like you can just buy them. So, closing at the 90s, comic books are in this very awkward stage of what is going to happen. And then 2001 hits, and we get 9/11. And 9/11 threw the comic book world on its head because you can't prepare for the what you. I'm gonna say the unknown is unknown until you know it or not. But you can't really prepare yourself for something that you don't expect to happen. So with 9/11, and the best book to handle it was Amazing Spider-Man #36, the Black issue. Why? Because the minute you open it up, you see Ground Zero, and Spider-Man going, "Oh my God, how did this happen? How did we not see this?" Even like people like running away, asking Spider-Man, like, "How could you not protect us? How did you not see it?" Well, no one saw it. I mean, some people. The FBI saw half of it, the CIA saw the other half, and they were so rival. There was such a rivalry between the two agencies that they didn't share their knowledge with it. 9/11 could have, I'm not going to say could have been, but could have been prevented if these two agencies actually spoke with one another. FBI had half, CIA had half. And they're like, well, put the two together. But the heroes, you don't expect that. When Dr. Doom attacks, when Kingpin attacks, or Magneto attacks, or Lex Luthor attacks, they all monologue, like, I'm going to do this. Like, I want to stop you. Like, try it. Like, oh, you stopped me. Okay, cool. So it happened. So kids are asking, like, Spider-Man, like, how did you not see this happening? And there's a great panel of Kingpin, Magneto, Dr. Octopus, and Dr. Doom crying. They're like, we're bad guys. We're not evil. And so they made this distinction in the comic books. Like, we're bad, but we're not evil. We're not this. And once again, who shows up? But Captain America. And there's this beautiful, John Cassaday and John Ray Niebuhr do this great arc taking place right after 9/11, where Captain America is running one day in the sunny skies, and kids are like playing with bikes and like, oh, it's wonderful. And the next day he's looking at it, it's like just gray, dust everywhere, asbestos, everything is just. And you see, and being in Austin at that time, if you weren't white, black, or Mexican, or you were somewhere in between, you were afraid for your lives because everyone was attacking you. Like I was reading about people like having acetone on them, or being spit upon, and like what religion are they? Like, I don't know, but they were Sikh. You shouldn't be spitting on anyone to begin with. I had friends at my dorm like, I'm not going to class. I'm scared. They were from the Middle East. Like, no. I'm going to learn my classes here in my bedroom where I'm safe. But Captain America once again shows up and stops an attack and says, no, we're better than this. This is not us. This is not America. And Captain America has this moment again in Secret Empire, which we'll get to. So out of 9/11, we get the Patriot Act. We're going to go into your phones. We're going to go into your emails. Like, well, I didn't do anything. Don't go into my browser history either. So what do we get? We get Civil War. We get Captain America and Iron Man, the two icons of Marvel, really at that time, clashing. We need to be safe. Yeah, but we can't give up our freedoms for, safety. Well, maybe we should, maybe we shouldn't. We get this great Mark Millar, Steve McNiven miniseries. All right, so we jump from there to here now, and as we're wrapping up, and I hope you all had a really great time. So now we go from that to the past, 10 years. What's happening in comic books today? So we are getting better representation. Brian Michael Bendis had Iceman come out as gay, and you're like, that makes sense. And also, to make one of the original X-Men gay, it was so well done. We had Sam Wilson as Captain America, and we have, Ms. Marvel, who's this young Muslim woman, and she's a great character. They do such a great job with her. And then we have Secret Empire, which, by the way, Secret Empire, Nick Spencer did a great job, but it was too much of a slow burn. If you don't know, huh?
Thank you. That's what I was saying.
You're welcome. You're welcome. It was a slow burn, but the ending is so satisfying. So, and it's perfect. It's a great analogy during the Trump administration, the Trump era. Captain America is now Hydra. Captain America is now evil. The embodiment of our country is now secretly a Nazi. And so what happened? I'll finish this with the ending of Secret Empire. So what happens? Old Captain America gets corrupted, and a new Captain America gets created. Like the soul of Captain America comes out of what is basically the Tesseract, the Cosmic Cube. Thank you, Frank. So now you have the war for America's soul being fought between good Captain America and evil Captain America. And the way that Nick Spencer finishes it is that even at the darkest moment of our country, we've always turned it around. We've always been better. No, we're not going to make things great again, but we can make things. We can continue to make this country great, make it better. We've always had flaws. I mean, going back to the beginning of this panel, one of them was racist. Batman killed people by breaking their necks. Like, oh, he's dead. Captain America keeps fighting. He's like, no, we keep fighting for what's right, for what's good, for our fellow brother, for our fellow sister. Even if we don't agree with them, if you still fight for them. We're all American. We fight and we continue fighting. And when you can't fight anymore, you get someone to help you fight for what's right, for what's just, for America. And that is my panel. Thank you. All right, so I've got 9 minutes. So any questions? Let's do a Q&A. Let's do this. Any questions at all? Yes.
So I've actually got 2 questions.
Sure.
The first one, you were talking about how the original conception of Black Panther was a white character, and they reversed course and went the direction they always should have.
Right.
Do you think a similar thing happened with Iron Fist, where they cast a blonde white male, especially after all the backlash of the Netflix series? Where maybe it was just a product of the times, where they cast a white male, where maybe an Asian lead might have been a better fit?
So, with Iron Fist, so Danny Rand was always a white guy. Because in the 70s, every white guy wanted to know Kung Fu. Everyone was literally Kung Fu fighting. They made songs about it. I mean, come on now. Everyone was Kung Fu fighting. And it's in that, like, they maybe should have made him, like, Asian, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, whichever part of Asia you want him to, not Russia. But, someone who was like, oh, that makes sense. And that's where we get Shang-Chi, and that's where the movie's going to come from. Now, should they have made Danny Rand Asian? I'm kind of in the no, but because that's not the character. But on the same note, if they did, kind of like when they made Michael B. Jordan the Human Torch, as long as you do it great, as long as the writing's good, go for it. Michael Clark Duncan, up until Vincent D'Onofrio, was a badass Kingpin. And I remember everyone like, oh, but he's black. I'm like, the dude is huge. He will lift a tank over his head. I don't care. That's an imposing figure. The Kingpin should be like, oh God. And you get like, okay. But that's I'm kind of like that. They should have gone, maybe a better actor. But they went the right course. But if they had gone a different route, I would have been angry. And you said another question? You too? Okay, what's the other one?
So, well, just saying, definite agreement on Kingpin, maybe not so much on Michael B. Jordan's Human Torch, but when you were going through different eras in the comic books, gold, silver, bronze, modern, do you think that there's kind of one that started in the last 10, 15 years where comic books are becoming increasingly more based on what the cinematic universes and all are doing, and kind of addressing culture differently?
That's a good question.
A much
bring that up. So about 10 years ago, right after like I think first Avenger came out.
Iron Man or Captain America?
Captain America. Marvel, was trying to like relaunch all their heroes under what they call the heroic age, where the heroes were like, boom, we're back to being, what we should be. And they've kind of maintained that, but now it's just like all over the place, and couldn't nail it down to save your life. But I mean, maybe Platinum. They're making bank, so why not Platinum? There we go. I'm gonna say it now. This age we're in now for the past 10 years, we're in the Platinum age. There we go. DC did the same thing, and DC went really, really, really dark, and now, they're trying to reverse it with New 52, and then Rebirth, and now Heroes in Crisis, and now they're like, DC's trying to figure out. We're not talking about the DCEU, the Marvel, their movie cinematic universe is kind of messy. Like, I love their movies, but it's like, where are you going with this? Shazam's awesome. How is it going to fit? They don't know. But I would call it the Platinum era. I'm coining it now, so I'm going to expect all royalties to be to me. Any other questions? I've got 4 minutes and 55 seconds left. Yes.
So we know about the outside of history, but for example, like in World War II, like Captain America, whatever. But the Axis, did they ever get like any comics or anything like to popularize their ideas?
Where did the Axis get their own?
I mean, like we got comic books for our heroes.
Right.
They got like their own heroes to promote their ideas.
That's actually a really good question. I don't think so. I think they were more movies. Like they had, like Joseph Goebbels was their PR person. And I mean his movies were just, like if you're not German, if you're not for the Nazi, Third Reich, you are not German. It was like, make Germany great again. It's like, oh yes. It's like, oh, wait a minute. No, they really didn't have their own comics. Like comics have always been kind of more like an American thing. Like, and when I've spoken to a lot of artists, they're like, yeah, we read Spider-Man, Captain America. Like they do have their own, but it's nothing like we have here. Some of our, I was on Instagram, and I was like watching Mike Diodato Jr. draw, and I'm like, that's not English. That's Portuguese. He's in Brazil? He's Brazilian? Like, all your favorite artists are, like, from other, like, parts of the world, and they're just like, oh, scanning in their art. So a lot of the famous artists come to look at America first for the comics, and then maybe everything else. Granted, Batman was an amalgamation of, like, Phantom and Zorro, so we kind of started the whole, like, taking first. But great question. Let's see here. 2 minutes left. 2 minutes left. Anything else? Nothing? Fantastic. Well, hey, thank y'all so much for our great panel, and I'll be outside.